YVAPE, which is a free nicotine and marijuana alternative means of correction program. People have also considered us to be an alternative to suspension program, but we've kind of been moving toward the alternative means of correction language because a lot of schools aren't suspending for things like tobacco violations anymore. So here's our team. If you reach out to us, you're most likely going to interact with Conley. She handles she's our outreach lead, or you'll interact with me. But we have a lot of other people also working on the YVAPE project. So we're part of Kick-It California at UC San Diego. And so I'm going to start by providing an overview of YVAPE and the intervention. I might play one of our videos and just a bit of audio of a mock call so you have a sense of students' experience. And then I'll also be talking a little bit just about Kick-It California cessation. So YVAPE is a free, like I said, alternative to suspension or alternative means of correction program focused on phone and video coaching support for students who are found with or under the influence of nicotine or marijuana at school. Students who are caught selling these products are also eligible, but that tends to be a little less common than the other two. We're available to all California schools with students 12 years and older. It actually used to only be public schools, so I need to update this slide, but we have now been allowed by CDE to include private schools as well. So public, private, all are available, or all are eligible now. All our materials are available in English and Spanish, as well as our coaching. We do a limited amount of coaching in a variety of Asian languages, but that tends to be by request only, so we don't really advertise that because of kind of low coach coverage in those languages. And we're funded by the California Department of Education as well as the California Department of Public Health. And you guys may have seen last year, the state superintendent sent out a letter encouraging schools to actually use YVAPE, which was great. So our goals really are to support a decrease in recidivism and suspensions among students found with nicotine and marijuana at school. Of course, to provide education to students and to help them quit or reduce their substance use if they're interested. And we really want to just be there to provide students in schools with a positive experience. Because we're housed in California, if the student goes through YVAPE and they want to call back and get extra support, we're always available for them. And just to support schools who don't have a program in place or who would like an additional option. A lot of schools use YVAPE in combination with or as a choice among other programs. So schools, we ask them to register. They can do this on our enrollment form just by selecting, I'd like to receive more information about YVAPE. They'll automatically be sent kind of a welcome packet, and then Conley follows up with them shortly after that as well, or just by sending an email to our support address, yvape-support at health.ucsd.edu. And we just ask that they designate a school contact, or sometimes the school has a team of contacts that works together so they can provide that. And as I mentioned, they received this welcome packet, which provides kind of an overview of YVAPE, how to utilize the program, our current flyers and brochures, and an optional letter that they can use to explain the program to their staff. So we already have that written for them, and they can just email that out. And of course, the welcome packet also includes the offer for a free virtual presentation for their staff. So essentially what I'm doing today. So YVAPE steps are enrollment, then the initial call, videos and discussion, a follow-up call, and then students now have 2 paths that they can take from this point. So the program is considered complete at step 4, this follow-up call. But if the student would like extra support, they can request or say yes when they're offered an optional second follow-up call if they just want a little extra check-in, or if they'd really like to focus more on quitting or maintenance of quitting, they can have a referral to Kick-It California for cessation. And that intake can be done right then at the end of that follow-up call with the same coach, because all YVAPE coaches are also Kick-It California coaches. So they don't even have to be transferred out. Or if the student doesn't have enough time, they of course can schedule time to be called for that intake. So I'll go over each of these steps next. So for enrollment, the school first needs to determine whether the student is eligible for YVAPE. And that requires the student to be 12 years or older. They have to be found with, under the influence, or selling nicotine or marijuana. Parent or guardian needs to provide verbal permission for participation if the student is 12 to 17 years old. And then the students themselves provide verbal consent for participation as well. And that's all, students of all age. And that verbal permission just needs to be given to the school. And then the school just checks a box letting us know that they received that. And because we are a virtual program, they need to have access to an email address and a phone. Or if not a phone, a tablet, and we can schedule like video calls instead. So once that school determines eligibility and gets that consent, we also ask that they provide them with an opt-out form. It just kind of explains the program to the student. You know, it's kind of like an informed consent form, except that it doesn't require a signature. And then they just enroll them on our website. And then as soon as they enroll them on the website, an enrollment email is sent to the student, the parent if the student's under 18, as well as the school contact who enrolled them. So I can show you our website next, which I'm sure some of you have seen. So here's the enrollment form. So that's of the most interest. Essentially, there's a few pages like this. The school provides their contact information because we have to let them know how the student is progressing through the program. I'll just pick a school at random and say I'm ready to enroll students in YVAPE. Now, if your school is trying to register, they can just click I'd like to receive more information about YVAPE instead. But I'll take you through the enrollment process. So then you just indicate that yes, I've received that consent from the student. And then you let us know what was the situation that kind of led the student to be enrolled in YVAPE. So were they in possession, under the influence, or selling? And then you provide the student's information because we'll be contacting them. The date of birth is required because they need to be at least 12 years old. And the grade level, student email. And then you select the language that you'd like the students' materials to be sent to them in, so either English or Spanish. That also will assign them to an English or Spanish speaking coach. And then what products that the student was found with school. So sometimes if a school doesn't know, they just click unknown, or like if they know it was a vape, but they're not sure what was in the vape, sometimes they'll select both, and that's completely fine because we'll ask the student directly as well. And then because the age I put in was less than 18, it asks just for the parents' information because we also send them emails about the program and their students' progress. And then so this is one of the things that's new. We have now embedded into the enrollment form the ability for schools to go ahead and schedule that first call for the student. Previously, it was left up to the student to schedule. They would be sent a link to our online scheduler in their enrollment form. And if they didn't schedule, we would just automatically start calling the next business day. But now the school can go ahead and schedule for themselves. Because we want the program to get started sooner rather than later, we only let you schedule out the next 3 business days rather than waiting like a week or 2. So you can choose, and as you can see, we're open before school, during school, and after school, so you can schedule at any of those times. And then this is also new. This just provides some context for our coaches. So you don't have to fill this part out, but if there is anything else important that you think would help the coaches more effectively work with the student, you can write just a little bit in here. And then once you hit submit, those emails automatically get sent. Just to kind of take you through the website, this provides just some instructions for each kind of stakeholder in the program, so schools, parents, and students. You can also find all our videos down here if you would like to watch them. The About Us page Has our little promo video, some information about Kick-It California and Kick-It California services, as well as like when our coaches are available, our times. And then the resources page, which I think is quite useful, but doesn't get utilized as much, has a few places. So the student e-referral and enroll online. These are two of Kick-It California services that I'll be talking about later. Essentially, these are two routes that you can enroll. Students can be enrolled in Kick-It California cessation services. So student e-referral is for staff to enroll students into Kick-It California's services, and enroll online is for students to enroll themselves, so self-referral. But down here, we also have like our flyer, brochure, the sample calls, some fact sheets, like this one, how to talk to your kids about vaping. We include that in the enrollment email to parents. There's a quit vaping plan that you can work with the student. We also have some external resources for nicotine and for marijuana as well. And then lastly, our contact information is here. So this is for support, and then this is to call directly to the coaches. And then of course, the website is available in Spanish as well. So that is the whole of our website. So here's that interactive flyer I was mentioning that we provide schools when they request more information. So it just kind of provides an overview of the program. It has kind of a testimonial video of people who have used the program before, links to all the videos and the mock calls, the brochure button to be able to request presentations and so on. This is our brochure. So this is meant to be folded in half. So this is actually the back page and the front page. And then here's the inside. We have those available on our website, or you can email us to request them in PDF form. Otherwise, we also can mail printed versions to schools upon request. So just briefly mention data security because we are a virtual program. So I just like to say that security of client information is of paramount importance to us. Both Kick-It California and UC San Diego Health are HIPAA covered entities, so we are required to comply with HIPAA privacy, security, and high-tech breach final rules. There's a lot more information about data security. So if people are interested, they can go to this link to learn more. And then just reiterating that we just require that schools obtain verbal consent from students before we're able to contact them. So about coach training. So this applies for all coaches at Kick-It California and YVAPE. They receive 60 hours of in-house training, and this comes in varied formats. So lecture, discussion, they role play with each other. They listen to example calls. And then that's followed by an intensive 1-month apprenticeship under a supervisor. They also have weekly meetings to discuss cases. And then YVAPE coaches specifically are required to undergo additional training focused on working with youth. All coaches receive continuing education, and new as of last year, we have now required all coaches and anyone on the YVAPE team to undergo background checks and fingerprinting. So me, Conley, everyone has gone through this process. So our general coaching goals are to provide a positive experience for students where they can really look inward and reflect on their behavior. We really want students to feel supported by our coaches so they can hopefully learn something new about themselves or vaping or marijuana, and then really take some time to reflect and consider behavior change. So it's our aim really to engage students in reflection on their own behavior and the consequences of that behavior. We really know that this is a skill that students are learning at this point in their life. And so we want to provide some structure to them and guidance on how to do so. So our coaches try to ask specific questions to help students think about their behavior, the consequences, and if their behavior is moving them toward or away from their goals. And then of course, we want to promote behavior change. But we firmly believe that this has to be the choice of the student. But we actively promote it and encourage them to think about behavior change. So this might look like reducing their use or ideally quitting altogether. So if you guys are familiar at all with motivational interviewing, a lot of that language kind of came from that. So we use motivational interviewing, and the goals of MI really are to help people move toward reducing their harmful behavior, in this case, their nicotine and marijuana use, by really helping them make an argument for that change. So the basis of MI really is that any change comes with ambivalence. So it's about exploring that ambivalence with the student. So the coaches try to get them to think about their behavior and then elicit their own reasons for change. We encourage them to think about then the next step, whether that's to reduce or to quit or to talk to a parent to get more support. And we're really just trying to push them or encourage them to choose change, which we know tends to be more helpful than being overly direct. When you start telling students what they must do, they can start to engage in reactance, which we're trying to avoid. So motivational interviewing is often discussed in the stages of change. So the stages really are just kind of important for knowing how to target your intervention to be the most helpful for the individual. So in YVAPE, students are often in these pre-contemplation or contemplation stages. Some students are farther along than that, of course, as well. But because this is kind of a program that's used when students are facing disciplinary action, they may not be ready to quit quite yet. So a lot of the times they're kind of in these earlier stages. So we try to focus our intervention mainly there. So we really try not to push cessation because we know that's going to result in resistance. So our goal really is to kind of tip the balance toward that change. Of course, if a student is interested in quitting, our coaches, provide them with those resources and work with them on cessation. Or of course, they really kind of try to promote then transitioning from YVAPE into Kick-It California cessation services, which are really basically Kick-It California's cessation services focus on this preparation to termination stages of change. So YVAPE kind of focus at the beginning, and then Kick-It California helps them work clear to the end. So that initial call, the student, as I mentioned, has the option to schedule the time for their initial call. And if they want voice or video Zoom, calls can be completed anytime between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. on weekdays, and then 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. on Saturdays. If the student does not schedule their call or misses an appointment, and if their school's contact doesn't schedule, then we just start proactively calling. We only make call attempts though after school hours, unless it's a scheduled appointment. So we only make these proactive attempts between 4 and 8:30 p.m. on weekdays and 10 a.m. to 4:30 on Saturdays. We also send students a reminder email and text approximately 15 minutes before their scheduled call. So that's a new thing this year as well that we hadn't been doing previously. And that actually came at the recommendation from some students. They're more likely to answer, getting that kind of heads up right before the call. So we've started doing that this year. And then a reminder email is sent to the student, parent, and school after we've made 5 attempts and have been unable to reach the student. And then the student also receives a text message. The initial call lasts typically around 20 to 30 minutes, but of course can last longer. It just depends how, if a student's saying yes, no to everything, or if they're actually really engaging in the call. So the coaching topics for the initial call, a lot of the beginning is spent focusing on trying to connect with the students. We don't get a lot of time with them, so it's important that the coach tries to connect with them in those first few minutes. So rapport building, then they talk to them about how they ended up in YVAPE, what they'd like to learn about nicotine, marijuana, tobacco products. Of course, their own nicotine and marijuana usage behavior, their likes and dislikes about substance use, health related to nicotine and marijuana, their motivation and confidence about cessation, addiction. What does addiction mean to them? Students often underestimate how addicted they actually are. Their triggers and what strategies can be developed to prevent those triggers from turning into substance use. Goal setting. So this goal doesn't necessarily have to be about substance use, it can be about any kind of healthy thing in their life. And the students who have been re-enrolled get an extra section on stress management. And then we end with some optional demographic questions, as well as going over what the next steps are, such as scheduling that follow-up call. So I do have a mock recording. Maybe we'll just play a few minutes of it so you can kind of just get a sense of what this is like. We have the full version on our website on that resources page. This whole call is about 20 minutes long, this recording, so I'll just play the first few minutes. We've also updated the protocols this year, but recorded this last year, so this is going to be slightly different than what students experience now, but most of it is the same.
Hello.
Hi, may I speak with Adrian?
This is Adrian.
Hi, Adrian. My name is Jackie. I'm one of the coaches here at YVAPE. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
All right, that's great to hear, and I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. So I want to check in, see if now is a good time for your YVAPE session with us.
I have time.
All right, good. So I do have a few questions just so I could get to know you a bit and see if there's any way that I could be helpful. However, what we discuss will be kept confidential. That means anything we talk about stays private. An exception to this would be there's a clear danger to you or someone else. And to make sure I'm doing a good job, all calls are recorded and a supervisor may monitor the call. Is that okay with you?
That's okay.
All right. There's a chance that your parents will want to know what we talked about in our call. If that does happen, I'll encourage them to just ask you about it. Is that okay?
Okay.
All right. And I am a health educator, so that means I could give you general information about tobacco and health. I'm not a licensed healthcare provider. This isn't a substitute for talking to a healthcare professional. I recommend you talk to your healthcare provider about your medical needs or treatment.
Okay.
All right. So, Adrian, we know you were sent to us as a consequence from your school, but we want to let you know we are here to listen to you and to support you. This is your time to learn more about substance use and to ask questions.
All right.
All right. Before we get started, it is helpful for me to know what you were using when you got in trouble at school. Was it nicotine, marijuana, or both?
It was just nicotine.
All right. And then you're in 9th grade, right?
Yeah, I'm in 9th grade.
All right. How's that been going?
It's been going good. Exciting to just, be in high school.
Oh, I'm glad to hear everything's been going well.
Okay.
How did you end up having the talk with us?
I was in the bathroom and I vaped and the security walked by and they saw the smoke and then they just searched me, so they found the vape.
Oh, I'm so sorry that happened. Okay. So what do you already know about this program or what to expect?
I haven't really heard much, just that I have to do it.
Okay. Well, I'll explain what will happen. You will have 2 calls with us. We will talk on the phone for a bit today, and I'll ask you some questions about your substance use. Then you'll watch a few videos, and we will talk about what you think about them in the next call. That's it. So I want to let you know we're not here to lecture you or try to make you quit. Okay. So is there anything you would like to learn about vaping or nicotine?
I guess it would be interesting to learn more about how, vapes affect your health, because I've heard a lot about how cigarettes are bad, but not too much about vapes. So I guess it'd be interesting to learn about that.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So, vaping, even though there is no smell or smoke, it disappears, it's still heating up a type of liquid that you're going into your lungs. So anything heated up is harmful to our lungs. And we have some videos on health effects and vaping as well that will go more into details that you can watch later on if you're interested in.
Oh, okay, great.
All right. And then
Okay, so that's just the start of the call. It goes on for another 15, 16 minutes. But as I said, we have the full recording available on the resource pages of our website if you'd like to listen for the entirety of the call.
Hello.
So some of the changes to the initial call for this year are the following. So we updated our substance use questions. So we're asking about 30-day and 24-hour substance use instead of past week use. We're asking additional questions about nicotine pouches and cigarettes. Cigarettes still are not very popular among youth, but there might be a slight increase recently. Nicotine pouches have becoming more popular. We also removed 2 of our demographic questions. So a follow-up gender identity question. So if they identified themselves in another way, we previously asked how they identified themselves. So we've removed that as well as sexual orientation. We got a bit of pushback from parents this past year regarding both of these questions. So we still ask what their gender was, but just not the follow-up or sexual orientation anymore. We've also added a 4-item anxiety and depression scale to the demographic section. Again, this is optional, but we're trying to start to kind of expand YVAPE also more into kind of emotional well-being, in addition to focusing just on substance use. So we've added the PHQ-4, and then which just asks 4 questions about anxiety and depressive symptomology. And then we also provide all students right after that questionnaire with a referral to SAMHSA's National Helpline if they wanted to, or Cal Hope Warm Line, if they wanted to speak to a peer counselor. We are also now including an email notification to the school contact once the student completes the initial call. Previously, they would get an enrollment email, that reminder email after 5 missed call attempts, and then whether or not the student completed the program. So now they're also getting notified when that first call is completed as well. So they can kind of have more real-time updates about the student's progression through the program. So then the next step is the videos and discussion. So we like to encourage parents to participate in this part of the program, but that's entirely voluntary. And then we require students to watch a minimum of 3 videos. They are 2 to 4 minutes each on average. And we have 2 new videos for the school year. So top 6 tips to quit nicotine vapes, and then marijuana and mental health. And then we also request that they go through at least 4 of our discussion questions, which I can show you. We're kind of on a hidden page on our website. Basically, you just have to add /videos to get to this page at the end of the website. So this is the page that students are sent in their email. So it includes all the videos here, and then also the discussion questions that they have. So we just request that they pick 4 to 5 that seem most relevant or interesting to them. So a lot of it is about substance use, but also some more kind of emotional well-being questions. So like, what are some goals you'd like to achieve in the next month or in the next year? Think about a time when you were happiest. What was going on then? What do you think you would have to do to feel like that again? But then, of course, substance use questions related to the videos. So like we have a marketing manipulation video. So what do you know about how vaping companies like Elf Bar, Juul, and Views market their products to teens? What do you think the risks of using nicotine and marijuana are? How do you think using nicotine and marijuana affects long-term health? And so on. So they can pick 4 to 5 of these. And if they are watching the videos with their parents, then they can talk through these questions with them. It could also be a school staff member, a counselor. And if they don't have anyone to go through them with, then our coach will spend extra time on the follow-up call going through these questions with them. Oops. So this is actually the health effects of vaping video. So this is one of the first videos that we developed, but I'll play it because it was the most watched video during the 2024 to 25 school year. 49% of students reported that this was one of the 3 videos that they watched. So it's just 3 minutes, so I'll go ahead and play it.
Tobacco smoking has been around for hundreds of years. As early as the 1700s, the Virginia Company was mass-producing tobacco. Even back then, many people thought tobacco smoking wasn't healthy, but they continued to smoke because of the addictive nature of nicotine. What about today? The message now is vaping is a healthier way to get nicotine than smoking. But vaping hasn't been around that long. There has not been enough time to learn about the long-term health risks of vaping. What we do know is that vaping affects the lungs because vapes have toxic chemicals and metals in them, like formaldehyde, acrolein, lead, and chromium. Vapes also give nicotine to the user. Nicotine causes heart rate and blood pressure to go up. And one other big thing, nicotine causes changes in the brain. One change is that nicotine makes the brain release feel-good chemicals like dopamine. The brain gets used to this, which means that after a while, the user needs nicotine just to feel normal. And when people try to quit, it's hard to stay quit. What keeps this going are vapes like Juul and Puff Bar. These products give high levels of nicotine by using nicotine salts. Salts allow for higher concentrations to be inhaled more easily and absorbed faster than older vape devices. Why is this a problem? For teens, too much nicotine can really mess with brain development. The teen brain still needs time to develop before it can run like an adult brain. The brain also needs a strong link between thinking and processing to work at a high level. Nicotine attacks this process and can cause lasting problems like not being able to control impulses and anxiety, and can lead to issues with learning and attention. Because addiction is a form of learning, youth can get addicted more easily than adults. A developing brain is easier to hook for life. Brain development sets the stage for adult life. The more awareness you have about this, the better decisions you'll be able to make, and the greater the chance your brain will develop in the most healthy way.
Okay, and then the last required step for YVAPE is the follow-up call. So the student schedules this call during their initial call. Just like the initial call, if there's missed appointments, the coach will proactively call the student up to 5 times. And again, these attempts are made after school hours on weekdays and between 10 and 4:30 on Saturdays. And again, that student will receive a reminder email and text 15 minutes before their scheduled call, as well as an email after 5 and missed call attempts. And then the student and parent also receive the email after 5 missed call attempts. The follow-up call tends to be a little bit shorter. It's around 15 minutes. The topics are essentially to check in with a student, to discuss the videos and discussion questions, whether there were any changes in nicotine and marijuana use behavior. And then for multi-day students, whether they had completed the goal that they had set during the initial call or made any kind of steps or progress toward it. And the students who have been re-enrolled in YVAPE for a second or third time will also receive extra coaching on their triggers and strategies. Coaches, of course, will address any questions students may have, and then invite the students to utilize other Kick-It California services, particularly if the student wants to work on cessation. So if the student is interested, the coach can complete their intake call for the cessation program right then during that call. And then completion of this call completes the program. Typically, students take around between 2 to 12 days, depending on the student's availability and, of course, motivation. However, new last year, we started to allow the completion of the program in a single day. Now, while we think that students benefit more from having the program take place over several days, so they actually have time to process what they've discussed in the calls and learn from the videos, and to engage in some initial behavior change. But we do want to have that single day option available for those students who really require it. And that kind of came about because we did have some schools using the program with suspension. So instead of an alternative to suspension, they were requiring students to stay suspended until they completed the program. And it's just kind of our philosophy that it's best for students to be back in school. So for those students in particular, we'd allow them to complete both calls in a single day, like one in the morning, then videos, and then the follow-up call in the afternoon or evening. So some changes to the follow-up protocol for this year. We updated the substance use questions. They're identical to those in the initial call. And then are now including a question about whether students want a referral to Kick-It California for additional help with quitting nicotine or marijuana. So once they complete that call, they receive the certificate of completion. This is also new this year, is also the certificates being sent to the school contact in addition to the student. And then if the student does not complete the program, 4 weeks after enrollment, the student, parent, and school will receive an email that details what activities were not completed. Students also have the option of reactivation. So this can happen at any time. Schools don't have to wait for this 4-week mark. And essentially, they just have to email our support email address, or they can tell a coach on the phone that they just like the call attempts to start again. So when this happens, essentially we restart those 5 call attempts at whatever call the student hadn't completed yet. And we can reactivate more than once as well. We've had a few students require being reactivated up to 3 times. We also have an optional follow-up call, which was new last year. So at the end of the required follow-up call, students do have the option to schedule this optional follow-up call. The coaching topics are very similar to the required follow-up call, but there's a greater focus on discussing whether the student has support in their life and providing students with ideas of how to increase kind of social support in their life. Unlike the required calls where coaches make up to 5 attempts, a YVAPE coach only typically makes 1 or 2 attempts for this call, since it's not a required one. But the student can always call in if they choose, or can schedule another call attempt. So as I mentioned, there's now the optional referral to, well, it has always been available, but now we're trying to increase the accessibility of this referral to Kick-It California for cessation. So Kick-It California has a variety of cessation services that students can utilize. The telephone coaching, we have a texting program where they can text quit smoking or quit vaping to 66819. We have online chat, although I think they're kind of working on updating that. We have smartphone apps on iOS and Android. It's called the Kick-It Quit app. And then we also can send out self-help materials to students. One notable differences, though, is that Kick-It California is only available for students. The coaching, the telephone coaching, and texting are only available for students 13 years and older, whereas YVAPE is available for 12 years and older. So here's kind of a diagram of the YVAPE student's referral path. So the student accepts the referral to Kick-It California and then decides whether to complete an intake call at the end of their YVAPE follow-up call, or they schedule a call for a future date. If the student schedules the intake for a later date, then Kick-It California attempts to contact the student multiple times over a 2-week period. The student will either be reached or not reached after the end of that series of attempts. If they're reached, then they'll complete that intake. or they can decline services, of course. They, may have changed their mind in the meantime. So if they complete the intake though, then they have two paths from there. They can either choose to continue on with coaching or choose to receive those self-help materials. If they choose coaching, then they'll have initial coaching session, and then that is followed up by a series of follow-up calls. So for the televote coaching, it's evidence-based, of course. Kick-It California has been providing services for over 30 years and have tested the counseling protocols in randomized trials. It's also very clinically rich. And so even though we've tested these protocols, they are still tailored to the individual and their specific needs. So the protocols really focus on motivation, ambivalence, planning, and skill building. And then having these proactive calls also provides kind of like a soft version of accountability, and that an appointment is set, and Kick-It California will call the client at those times. We also provide support. And then the cessation coaching is also culturally sensitive. It's offered in English, Spanish, Mandarin, Cantonese, Korean, and Vietnamese. As I mentioned, unlike YVAPE, which is available for 12 years and older, Kick-It cessation services are for 13 years and older. And this is due to policy restrictions on kind of providing individualized counseling and education to children. YVAPE is a bit more focused on psychoeducation, so we're able to lower the age limit to 12. And then, of course, it's free, thanks to funding from CDPH. So the Kick-It Quick Coaching Phone Protocol, we have that intake call. That's about 8 to 10 minutes, and it's to kind of determine what the student's needs are. So what products do they need help with quitting? What's their substance use patterns? And then the real bulk of coaching takes place in this initial call. So that's 25 to 30 minutes long, and it helps the student prepare to quit. So developing a quit plan, really diving deep into what their triggers are and developing strategies. And then there's a series of proactive follow-up calls. So there's up to 4 calls here. They tend to be 5 to 10 minutes, and they're on a relapse sensitive schedule. So that means that there's more calls in the first week than in the subsequent weeks, because that's when people are most likely to relapse. And then these focus on relapse prevention. So Kick-It California cessation referral is optional after completion of YVAPE, so schools are not automatically informed whether an individual student participates and how far they make it through. We encourage schools to check in with the student directly, and we may include this data in our aggregate year-end reports for schools though. But they're not getting like emails every time a call is completed in Kick-It California cessation services like they are for YVAPE. And then during the initial call, students are asked whether it would be okay, the initial call for YVAPE, excuse me, to contact them for evaluation. So this is new this year as well. This is not a required part of the program. If they consent, they're asked what method of contact they consent to, which is phone, email, or text. And then if they do consent, around 3 months, they'll be contacted for evaluation. It's very short, it's about 5 minutes. It's the same exact substance use questions that they're asked during YVAPE and the same PHQ-4 from the initial call, so that we can try to track changes in substance use over time to see if YVAPE has any lasting effects. And then there's just 2 evaluative questions. So if they were satisfied with services and what they'd like most, and then if they complete this, they get a $10 Amazon gift card. And then these are the reports, YVAPE reports that we provide to schools at the end of the semester and the end of the year. So twice a year. Because YVAPE has grown as much as it has, we now only provide these to schools automatically who enroll 5 or more students. If they've enrolled less than 5, we do it on request. And then we also do district and county reports on request as well. And then kind of back to Kick-It California, a student does not have to go through YVAPE to participate in Kick-It California cessation services. So there's kind of 2 routes of getting a student, 2 kind of enrollment form routes of getting a student enrolled in Kick-It California. One is the self-referral page, and then there's the school referral page. So I'll show you those real quick. So this is the school referral. The main difference is that there's a section that the school administrator fills out with their contact information and their school name. And this route allows us to track how many students from particular schools have been enrolled to Kick-It California Cessation Services. In which case, if there's 5 or more, we can create reports as well. So you just enter the school information, student information, the products. Kick-It California now has expanded to also marijuana cessation services, not just nicotine, but the form has not been updated yet. So you can just click other products if it's marijuana. And that's all you have to do, and the student's enrolled, and Kick-It California will start calling them the next day. There's also the self-referral form. So students can just sign themselves up to talk to a quick coach or to join our texting program. If they want to sign up, they just fill out this contact information here. So students don't have to do YVAPE. They don't even have to be fully ready to quit. They can just be interested because readiness to quit is something that kind of goes up and down. In closing, this figure kind of just shows how to determine which program you should use when referring students. So you just ask yourself, is the student facing disciplinary action for having nicotine and marijuana at school? If yes, enroll them in YVAPE. If no, then you just ask, are they interested in quitting tobacco, nicotine vapes, or now marijuana, since we are doing marijuana this year now as well. And if the answer is yes, they are interested in quitting, then you can provide them either with a self-referral or the school, sign them up yourselves using the school referral. In my experience, students are more likely to at least be signed up to receive that initial call if the school signs them up rather than signing themselves up. But that doesn't necessarily mean they'll be more likely to complete the program. Okay, so that's all I have. Here are our general web links for YVAPE as well as Kick-It California, and then the contact information for me and for Conley. All right, does anyone have any questions?